Yo, what's good, YouTube? It's boardzy, and this is going to be a review of the Gamesense MVP, which is actually a modernized version of the Microsoft WMO, which is a mouse from, I'd say, over 20 years ago. I reviewed it around a year ago. And yeah, the MVP wireless is finally out, and I think it is a surprisingly good mouse. Really, if you're a fan of the WMO in the past, I think you'll be pretty happy with this modern version. It's lighter, has side buttons, just feels solid all around. Compared to this mouse, which obviously can't hold it to modern standards, but it did not really stand the test of time. So yeah, the MVP wireless, I believe it's GameSense's first wireless mouse, so that's something to just keep in mind. But I will not be making any excuses if there are things that need to be mentioned. This was sent out for review, and yeah, just gonna get right into the review. So first thing I want to talk about is build quality. This thing is fucking rock solid. It weighs in at 75 grams. At 75 grams, they clearly aren't making any sacrifices to the structural integrity in the name of weight reduction, so it does feel solid all around quality-wise. Even the button quality is something that I found to be very good. There's minimal wobble, virtually no pre or post travel, just very well tensioned buttons. These are Kill 8.0. I'll get into those later. But yeah, I was genuinely impressed with the overall quality of this mouse and just like the premium in-hand feeling. The only things worth mentioning are that on my copy there is an occasional scroll wheel creak, but I can't really replicate it on purpose, so I'm not sure what's up with it really, but that's just one thing. And the coating is a bit slippery, but it does allow for Minecraft drag clicking. So that is a sacrifice that is ultimately worth it. I don't know if they picked this coating because they know it drag clicks, but it can indeed Minecraft drag click. Now moving on to something arguably more important, the shape of this mouse. I would classify the MVP wireless as a medium to large ambi mouse. You can see it next to the original WMO. The shapes are not identical. I believe the MVP wireless is a few millimeters shorter, which does change the in-hand feeling, but if you're able to pull off a grip on the WMO, I think you'll be perfectly fine with the MVP wireless. And when I said the MVP is shorter, I meant in terms of length. You can see when I compare the top profiles of these mice that the button height is actually lower, and the front of the mouse is generally lower on the WMO compared to the MVP, just worth mentioning. Another change is that notably on the right side, there is a lot more room to rest your fingers than on the original WMO. I feel like this was a pretty smart change. You can see that the button design is also updated. But yeah, compared to the GPX Superlight, you can see they might look somewhat similar. I just realized that was that fucking angle because I moved my camera. But the GPX actually has a thinner hump that gets into a deeper part of your palm. So it has a completely different in-hand feel, but both of these shapes feel great for claw grip with my 20 by 11 hands. You see the sides on the MVP wireless are very flat, so if that's something you're a fan of, I think you will find this mouse really unique in that regard. Works really well for palm or claw grip with my hand size. For more relaxed style grips. It's hard for me to pull off like an aggressive claw on this mouse, but I'm sure you could if your hands were big enough and it's the grip you're accustomed to. If you do have small hands, I wouldn't entirely write the MVP wireless off. You gotta realize the WMO, the shape it's inspired by, comes from a time where small mice really weren't popular. I think this was considered small for its time. So definitely not oriented towards people with small hands, but a pretty safe overall shape and a ambi shape that I found perfectly usable in game and just a good one. Next thing I want to talk about are the buttons. Like I mentioned before, these are using Kale 4.0 switches, and the quality on the main clicks is very good. This is a useless sound test while I'm speaking. Wow, that literally was useless. With the clicks, since they do offer that premium feeling and are tensioned very well, they are on the heavier side. Like when I go back to my Starlight after using this mouse, the Starlight clicks feel light. And it's pretty known that these Starlight clicks are on the heavier side. So if you absolutely hate heavy clicks, I don't think these will be for you, but I had no issues spamming these in a game like Fortnite or just any clicking scenarios on Kovacs. Next thing I want to talk about are the side buttons, which I think are honestly incredible. Some of the best side buttons I've ever used. I've said that like 5 times in this past year. But once again, these are using Hill 4.0 switches. I just think the positioning is perfect, at least for my hand size. You can see where I put my thumb. They're basically lining up right with the side buttons. I can make contact with the tip of my thumb, or I can just move my thumb up. It's really just a plethora of possibility when it comes to hitting these side buttons, and I applaud Gamesense for actually putting a big design that just isn't fucking stupid, because it is so easy to make a stupid and bad side button design on a mouse. This is getting rambly, but yeah, side button's a very solid. Scroll wheel, like I mentioned before, mine did have that creaking issue, but in all of the times I've been scrolling it on video, I haven't gotten that to happen. The scroll wheel click, actually I haven't like really done this before. It's pretty spammable on the lighter side, feels consistent. So yeah, all around solid there as well. And I figure that since the WMO was actually one of the first mice to have a scroll wheel, I should just do a quick sound test as a mouse wheel history lesson. It's just absolutely terrible. You basically feel nothing, but it still makes the grinding noise like a Zowie wheel. So even though I don't think the MVP wireless has the best wheel, definitely an improvement compared to this one. But yeah, I think Gamesense could generally just tweak the wheel, make it a bit higher quality, because I did experience a few issues. What else is there to talk about? Okay, the sensor. The MVP wireless is using a 3370. You can see the position. It's a bit low compared to the center of the mouse, and the WMO had a forward sensor position, so it's not identical in that regard. No issues with the LOD either. There might be a bit of DPI deviation, because on the 1600 step, I just noticed it having a sort of faster feeling. I was over flicking a bit, and the mouse just felt faster than the GPX despite being heavier, bulkier. Like, really no reason it should feel faster on the same sense. So I chalked it up to DPI deviation, but I mean, I suppose it could be something else. That I couldn't really notice any motion delay, like nothing comparable to the MM731, but it does seem like there is a slight floaty feeling that could be caused by like polling rate inconsistency, so I'm not exactly sure, but basically the sensor implementation is not completely flawless, and there might be a handful more milliseconds of motion delay than more premium wireless mice. If you aren't susceptible to minor sensor issues, it will be no big deal, but I think it's worth mentioning because it's something Gamesense could easily look into and maybe improve on in future batches, because at the $100 price point, you have mice like the X-Lite wireless available for cheaper, M4 wireless, the list goes on of like solid mice with 3370s available, and those do seem to have somewhat of a better implementation. But yeah, that's really all there is to say about that. It uses USB-C to charge. There is no adapter, so you just get the dongle that you plug into your PC. The battery life on this, even with RGB, is good. I've only had to charge this once in nearly 2 weeks of testing with the RGB on. So that's always good to note. Nothing like the shitty, glorious battery life. And yeah, I'm not actually sure what else there is to say. Oh, the mouse skates. Holy shit, how could I forget? These are surprisingly good for stock feet from a manufacturer. You can see they have some nice thickness to them. I would guess 0.8 millimeters. They might be 0.6 though. I'm not exactly sure. The rounded edges are very good, and the feet are tapered. Really no complaints, and they've glided well on the variety of pads I've tested them on. And that's really all for the review. All in all, this is a good mouse, and I was impressed with it for Gamesense's first wireless mouse. And if you're a fan of the WMO, the classic shape, this is easily the closest version to it. And I'm usually not a fan of like bringing back old shapes because they generally suck. But this one's very unique, and if you curl your fingers while playing claw grip, these buttons just feel different than any other mouse. I don't know what exactly it is, but definitely a unique shape, and the buttons and build feel great. So obviously I did point out a few issues. I'm not going to give this mouse the seal of approval, but very solid. They also sent out a wired version, I think, yeah. This one's 10 grams lighter and uses a 3389 sensor, and I seriously have not put a lot of time into this wired version, but I can say that the wire on it is actually very good and flexible, and if you don't want to deal with any of the potential wireless issues, or just want the same mouse but lighter and cheaper and don't mind the wire, it's an option. The weight definitely does feel lighter, and the mouse is more maneuverable, stealing the fresh reviews lingo, but the weight balancing on both of these is actually surprisingly good, and yeah, the wired one does feel noticeably lighter in hand. So that's really all I gotta say for this video. Pleasantly surprised by this mouse. Go check it out if you guys are interested, and yeah, that's really all I gotta say. Like and sub if you want more reviews. Peace.